Chapter 2. Into the Maw. Part 1. Officer Reynolds. The night was suffocating, the air thick with a sense of dread. Officer Reynolds' breath came in ragged gasps as he sprinted through the trees, his police uniform soaked with sweat. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. Behind him, he could hear the unnatural growl, a guttural sound that seemed to crawl under his skin. He dared a glance over his shoulder, and his blood ran cold. The creature was there, its twisted, grotesque body bounding through the shadows, gaining on him with terrifying speed. Its black, hollow eyes bore into him, and its limbs elongated and unnatural, moved like something that shouldn't exist. Reynolds tripped over a root, nearly going down, but he recovered, adrenaline pushing him forward. Ahead, through the twisted trees, he saw a mansion, towering over the landscape like some forgotten monument of a time long past. The building seemed ancient, its silhouette sharp and imposing, surrounded by an eerie village that stretches out like a forgotten nightmare. With no other option, Reynolds aimed for the mansion. Maybe, just maybe, he could find shelter within its walls, or at least put some distance between him and the creature. He could hear the thing getting closer, its claws scraping against the earth. Desperation clawed at his throat as he pushed his legs to go faster, but no matter how hard he ran, it wasn't enough. The creature let out a screech that pierced the night, and Reynolds nearly screamed himself. It was so close now, he could feel its presence like a weight on his back. Just as he reached the mansion's grounds, the creature leapt. It didn't aim for him. It vaulted against the stone walls of the mansion with a force that shook the air. The impact sent echoes of a low, rumbling noise through the night, and dust trickled down from the ancient stones. Reynolds stumbled in terror, collapsing to his knees, eyes wide as he watched the monstrous thing twist unnaturally in mid-air, its jagged claws scraping against the wall before it kicked off, launching itself back toward him with savage grace. He had no time to react. The creature landed with a brutal thud, its sharp claws slicing through the air, and in a heartbeat, it tore through him. The officer's body split in two with sickening ease, his screams cut short, and the night was quiet again, save for the creature's low growl as it stood over the bloodied remains. Marcus stood at the long wooden table in the middle of the room, methodically packing 7.62mm rounds into a magazine with calm precision. The soft metallic click of each bullet echoed in the silence, contrasting with the tension building around him. Nearby, Julia watched, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to keep her breathing steady. She couldn't shake the fear gnawing at her, knowing that Marcus was about to step outside. "Do you really have to go out there?" she asked quietly, her voice wavering despite her best efforts to sound composed. Marcus glanced at her, a reassuring smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as he finished securing the last round. "We have to know what's out there. We can't stay cooped up here forever," he replied, sliding the magazine into place with a click. "Besides, I won't be alone. Mike will have eyes on me with the drone the whole time." Julia's eyes flicked to the AR-10 resting on the table, the Kevlar vest beside it already rigged with MOLLE pockets and mag pouches. She admired his bravery, the way he handled the weapons with a calm that made her feel both safe and uneasy at the same time. He made it look so easy, but deep down, she was terrified. What if something went wrong? "I wish you didn't have to do this," she whispered, taking a step closer. Marcus, securing the vest onto his broad chest, looked up and met her gaze. His eyes softened for a moment. "I'll be fine, Julia," he said in a low, soothing tone. "I've done this kind of thing before." He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "I promise I'll be careful." Julia nodded, though her fear remained. She admired how brave he was, but that same bravery made her anxious. Out there, beyond the safety of the mansion, anything could happen. As Marcus slung the AR-10 over his shoulder, his grip firm but relaxed, she tried to swallow the lump in her throat. He checked his gear one last time, making sure every magazine was in place, the weight of the Kevlar vest settling on him like a second skin. "If anything happens," Julia began, her voice faltering. "I'll be back before you know it." Marcus cut her off with a confident grin, giving her a reassuring wink. "And I'll bring back some answers." Marcus handed Mike a radio with a headset, securing his own as he spoke. "Here, you'll need this so we can talk easily." Mike took the headset and grinned, already fitting it on. "Yeah, I'll be up on the roof, safe and sound," he said with a laugh. "You're the one who's gonna be in deep shit, man." Marcus smirked, then reached into his gear and pulled out a pair of Swarovski binoculars with thermal night vision. He handed them over to Mike. "Just in case." Mike's eyes widened slightly as he took the binoculars, admiring the craftsmanship. "Man, you're really preparing for the worst, huh?" "Always," Marcus replied, his tone serious now. "Just keep an eye out for me." Mike gave a nod, the humor fading a little. I've got your back. Marcus finished strapping on his gear and turned to Julia, who stood nearby, her eyes full of worry. He stepped toward her, cupping her face gently. I'll be fine, he whispered, trying to reassure her. Before she could protest, he leaned in and kissed her softly, lingering for a moment longer than usual. Stay safe in here, he added as he pulled back. She nodded, but her expression said she wasn't convinced. With one final glance, Marcus turned and made his way to the front door. The sound of it creaking open echoed through the mansion as he stepped outside, the heavy wooden door closing behind him. Mike, already packing up his drone, gave Marcus a quick nod before turning towards the staircase leading to the roof. I'll keep an eye on you from up top, he called over his shoulder. Marcus grinned slightly. Just don't get too comfortable up there. Mike laughed, hefting the drone under his arm as he hurried upstairs, the sound of his boots fading as Marcus headed out into the eerie village beyond. Marcus stepped cautiously into the open, his senses heightened as he glanced up. The soft hum of the drone overhead was a reassuring presence in the eerie silence of the village. He knew Mike was up there, keeping watch. He pressed the button on his radio. Radio check. Testing, do you copy? Loud and clear, Marcus, Mike's voice crackled back, precise and professional. Everything good on your end? Affirmative. All systems are operational, Marcus replied, scanning the area. I need you to scout ahead. Let me know if you spot anything unusual. Roger that. I'll keep you updated. Switching to thermal now, Mike responded, the faint whir of the drone adjusting its sensors barely audible over the radio. Marcus nodded to himself. Stay sharp up there. I'll move forward cautiously. Copy that. Just keep your head on a swivel. You know what's out there. Mike said before the connection fell silent, leaving Marcus alone in the dim light of the abandoned village, waiting for updates from the drone. Marcus moved from cover to cover, blending seamlessly into the shadows cast by the dilapidated buildings and twisted trees. He took his time, crouching low, aware of every sound around him. As Mike maneuvered the drone overhead, he was taken aback by Marcus's skill. Even with the thermal camera, it was difficult to get a clear read on his movements. Marcus seemed to flow like water, expertly using the environment to his advantage. Wow, who is this guy? Mike muttered to himself, astonished. He had known Marcus was capable, but seeing him in action brought a new level of respect. The way he navigated the terrain with such stealth and precision was impressive, even for a trained soldier. Mike refocused on the screen, keeping the drone steady above Marcus as he continued to scout the area. He felt a mix of admiration and concern, knowing that while Marcus was skilled, the dangers of the village were far from over. As Marcus approached the abandoned building, roughly 500 meters away from the mansion, he stopped and took cover in the shadows. The structure loomed ahead, its broken windows and crumbling facade hinting at years of neglect. He blended seamlessly into the darkness, his breathing steady as he scanned the area for any signs of movement. Mike's voice crackled through the radio. Is everything okay down there? Affirmative, Marcus replied, his voice low and measured. I'm holding off here, keeping an eye on the building for a few minutes. No movement so far. Just then, Mike noticed a figure approaching from behind him. He turned to see Julia making her way up to the roof. She glanced at Mike, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Is Marcus all right? She asked, stepping closer to the drone display. Yeah, he's fine, just doing his thing down there, Mike replied, watching the screen intently. He's keeping watch on that abandoned building. Julia peered over Mike's shoulder at the drone feed, her eyes widening as she tried to catch a glimpse of Marcus. I can't believe he's out there. What if... Hey, he knows what he's doing, Mike reassured her, though he shared her unease. Let's just keep an eye on him. Together, they focused on the display, watching the thermal imaging of the area surrounding the building, hoping for the best but ready for anything. Marcus, hold up, Mike exclaimed, urgency in his tone. I see something moving on the other side of the building heading in your direction. Can't make out what it is, but it doesn't look as big as those other creatures. Marcus froze, his heart racing. Copy that. I'll stay put and observe. He crouched low, peering around the edge of the building. The shadows danced around him, and he focused his attention on the area Mike indicated. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to react. Any more details? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Not yet, Mike replied, adjusting the drone's angle for a better view. It's small, maybe the size of a dog or a large cat. Just keep your eyes peeled. Understood, Marcus said, shifting slightly to maintain his cover. Let me know if it gets any closer. As he waited, the silence grew heavy, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. The thrill of the hunt mixed with an unsettling sense of foreboding as he scanned the shadows, ready for whatever came next. Whatever had been moving on the other side of the building had vanished from sight, perhaps darting inside. Marcus tightened his grip on the AR-10, lifting it to his shoulder, the barrel pointing forward as he advanced cautiously toward the building. He could feel the weight of the moment settling around him. Approaching the door, he paused, taking a breath before slipping inside like a shadow. The interior was dim, the remnants of what once might have been a vibrant space now cloaked in dust and decay. It was hard to tell if this had ever been a school. There were no desks, no classrooms, just empty rooms and scattered debris. Marcus moved through the lower level slowly and deliberately, each step calculated. He made a point to check every corner, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. It felt like an eternity as he pushed deeper into the building, the silence amplifying his senses. The effort to move with such care was exhausting. He had forgotten how physically demanding it could be to maintain this level of focus. Every creak of the floorboards felt amplified, every breath he took measured. He forced himself to remember the training, the countless hours spent honing these skills. It was a matter of survival. He could not afford to skip any corners, any spaces that might hide an unseen threat ready to jump out at him from the darkness. As he sliced a corner, he felt the tension in the air. Each empty room held a potential danger, and he reminded himself to stay sharp, to remain vigilant. With every sound, he tensed, ready to react, knowing that the unknown could be lurking just beyond his sight. Just as Marcus began to relax his focus, the sudden, piercing scream echoed from the floor above him, shattering the oppressive silence. It sent a chill down his spine, and instinct kicked in. "Someone is here," he said urgently over the radio, his heart racing. "What? Where?" Mike's voice crackled back, urgency lacing his tone as he rotated the drone overhead, trying to gain a clearer view of the building's upper floors. "In the building," Marcus replied, glancing up toward the ceiling as if he could see through the layers above him. "And from the sound of it, they're not having a great time." Mike's response was immediate. "I'm checking the drone feed. Hold tight and stay low. I'll see if I can spot anything from above." Marcus moved quickly, trying to remain silent as he pressed himself against the wall, ears straining for any further sounds. The scream had been full of terror, an unmistakable sign that something was wrong. He could almost hear the heartbeat pounding in his ears as he considered his next move. "Do you see anything?" Marcus asked, his voice low but tense. "Not yet," Mike replied, focusing intently on the drone's display. "But I'm getting a thermal reading. It looks like there are multiple heat signatures on the floor above you. One of them is, well, it's larger." "Great," Marcus muttered, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. "Just stay sharp," Mike said, his tone steady despite the tension. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I'm going to move up. Keep an eye on the drone feed, and let me know what you see." With that, he began to ascend the staircase, moving slowly and quietly, every instinct screaming at him to be ready for anything. The dread of what lay ahead gnawed at him, but he had to do this, and he couldn't let fear dictate his actions. Going up staircases had always been a cautious endeavor for Marcus. He knew all too well how much could go wrong on a staircase, especially when there were hostiles nearby. However, with Mike monitoring from the drone outside, he felt a slight edge of reassurance, even if it was fleeting. After all, he could never truly relax in a situation like this. He ascended the stairs with practiced care, each step measured and deliberate, every creak of wood echoing in the stillness. Reaching the top, he paused and whispered into the radio, "Mike, are they still in the same position?" "Affirmative," Mike replied, his voice steady. "Looks like they haven't moved." Marcus took a breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. With a surge of determination, he moved through the doorway like a bolt of lightning, the AR-10 raised and ready. What he saw chilled him to the core. In the far corner of the room sat a dog, perfectly still and silent, its fur matted and eyes wide with fear. In front of the dog, one of the grotesque creatures stood motionless, its twisted form casting a dark shadow over the innocent animal. The dog lifted one ear, giving Marcus a wary look that seemed to size him up, but it made no sound. He stood frozen in place, a heartbeat stretching into eternity as he took in the scene. The creature remained still, its gaze fixed ahead, unaware of Marcus's presence. Every instinct told him to act, but the unnerving stillness held him captive. He knew he had to remain calm. Whatever was happening in this room was precarious. He couldn't afford to alert the creature or the dog. "Mike, I see the dog," Marcus whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "But the creature, it's not moving." "Stay ready," Mike warned. "If things go south, You know what to do. Marcus nodded, though he knew Mike couldn't see him. He remained tense, eyes darting between the creature and the dog. Something about the scene felt off, as if he were standing on the edge of a knife. Then, without warning, the larger of the two creatures turned and locked its grotesque gaze on Marcus. Time seemed to freeze, and a cold knot of fear tightened in his stomach. This is it, he thought. Instinct kicked in. He let the AR-10 rip, double-tapping the trigger. The 2 rounds slammed into the creature's face with a sickening thud, and Marcus watched in grim satisfaction as blood and brain matter splattered against the wall behind it. Nice, he thought, if it bleeds, it can die. Before he could even process what had just happened, he swung the rifle toward the other creature, which was already charging at him. He squeezed off 2 more rounds, each bullet finding its mark. The creature screamed in agony, its voice a horrific blend of pain and fury. It slid across the floor toward him, momentum carrying it forward. Not on my watch, Marcus thought as he leveled the rifle and delivered 2 more rounds to its face. The sound of gunfire echoed in the empty building, followed by the thud of the creature's body hitting the ground. The larger creature was still on its feet, however, swaying slightly as it absorbed the impact. Marcus didn't waste a moment. He pivoted to the right and unleashed another burst of fire, 2 more rounds tearing into its grotesque visage. As he stood there, heart pounding, a sigh of relief washed over him. It seems these things can die. Until now, he'd harbored a nagging worry about their durability, their ability to withstand his firepower. But looking at the dead creatures sprawled on the floor, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Mike, he breathed into the radio, keeping his voice steady. I just took down 2. We can kill them. Copy that, Mike replied, his tone laced with surprise. You all right up there? Yeah, I'm good, Marcus said, though he could feel the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Just need to check the area. He took a deep breath, scanning the room for any other threats, feeling the weight of his weapon in his hands. The fight had only just begun, but for the first time since entering the mansion, he felt a sense of control. The dog got up and leisurely jogged over to Marcus, its tail wagging, and licked his hand as if they were old friends. It seemed completely unfazed by the recent chaos. Marcus crouched down, studying the Belgian Malinois, his instincts kicking in. This dog was no ordinary mutt. It was a trained police or military service dog. But how and why was it here? Suddenly, a flashback hit him like a cold wave. He recalled the horrific moment when he encountered the first creature, the body of the man who had been torn apart. It had been too badly broken to make out much detail from a distance, but now that he thought back, he was sure the man had been wearing a police uniform. How did he miss this? A sense of dread washed over him. He couldn't believe he hadn't pieced it together sooner. The dog must have been with the officer, and now it all made sense. Frank's revolver, the creature's presence, the urgency of their situation. With this revelation, he understood the implications. They were the escaped convicts. His stomach knotted at the thought, and he knew that keeping this information from the others would be crucial. He couldn't let anyone else know what he had just uncovered. Come here, buddy, he murmured, beckoning the dog closer. The Malinois responded, trotting up to him, its eyes full of loyalty and understanding. Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the dog could help them navigate this nightmare. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, Mike's voice cutting through the tension. Marcus, we have a problem. I see multiple creatures heading in your direction. You better run. Panic surged through Marcus as he processed the warning. He glanced back at the dead creatures sprawled across the floor, their lifeless bodies offering a temporary sense of security that now seemed foolish. The Malinois stood alert beside him, eyes focused and ready for action. Copy that, Mike, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. How many? Looks like at least 4, maybe more. They're moving fast. Get out of there now. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He felt a rush of urgency as he turned to sprint for the door, the dog already following him without hesitation. Together, they dashed out of the abandoned building, and Marcus glanced around for a clear route back to the mansion. Where do I go? He asked, scanning the area for any signs of safety. Head straight. The creatures are coming from the other side of the building. The route back to the mansion is clear. Mike instructed, his voice urgent. Roger that. Marcus bolted forward, feeling the dog close at his side. Every instinct screamed for him to get back to the mansion as the growls of the approaching creatures echoed through the air, chilling him to the bone. He pushed himself to run faster, determined to reach safety. As Marcus had a clear view of the mansion, his mind raced back to the courtyard where he first encountered the creature. The body of the officer, he thought suddenly. Fuck it, he muttered under his breath. Without a second thought, he veered off course, sprinting toward the courtyard, his heart pounding. Mike and Julia, watching through the drone feed, immediately noticed his change in direction. "What are you doing, Marcus?" Julia's voice cracked through the radio, concern evident. "I have to check something urgent," Marcus replied, barely slowing his pace. He threw a glance over his shoulder. No sign of the creatures yet, but he could hear them, their guttural growls echoing through the eerie village, closing in on his trail. He knew they wouldn't miss his scent much longer. Rounding the corner of the courtyard, he spotted the remains. The stench hit him like a wall, a brutal reminder of the carnage. Marcus knew that smell too well, and he had never managed to get used to it. Marcus pushed through it, focusing on his mission. There, tangled in the mess of broken bones and torn flesh, something caught his eye. A glint of metal. He crouched down, gagging at the sight, but quickly spotted what he had come for, a police badge. It was lodged between the remains of the officer's ribcage, barely visible. With a swift grimace-filled motion, he yanked it free. "Got it," Marcus whispered, immediately turning on his heel and bolting toward the mansion, the dog silent and steady right by his side. Hurry up, Marcus. They're closing in fast," Mike urged through the radio. Marcus's eyes darted to his left. His heart stopped for a beat. Shit. There they were, 5, maybe 6 creatures, moving inhumanly fast, only about 150 meters away and closing in quickly. "Fuck," Marcus spat as he sprinted even harder to the front door. Marcus's heart pounded as the fastest of the creatures closed the gap between them. The AR kicked hard against his shoulder as he fired off round after round, trying to stop the monster's relentless charge. It was too close, and he knew it. With only meters to spare, the creature lunged, a blur of teeth and claws aiming straight for him. The bullets hit their mark, tearing into the creature's chest and face, making pieces of its face burst and disintegrated, but its momentum carried it forward like a freight train. Marcus braced himself, knowing there was no time to escape. The creature's massive weight slammed into him, knocking him backward into the stone wall of the mansion with bone-jarring force. The world spun for a second as the impact knocked the wind out of him, his rifle slipping from his grasp as it clattered to the ground. Pain shot through his body, but he knew he couldn't afford to stay down. The creature, though mortally wounded, was still thrashing on top of him, its claws scraping at the air in its death throes. As Marcus fought to catch his breath, the dead creature slumped on top of him, its weight crushing him against the cold stone wall. The monster's death throes still rattled in its chest as Marcus strained to push it off. Before he could get free, another creature was already on top of him, its claws swiping at his body. His AR lay just out of reach, so Marcus went for his SIG, pulling it from his holster as fast as he could. The dog, despite being injured, leaped forward, trying to fight off the creature. It latched onto the monster's leg, snarling and biting to keep it from getting any closer to Marcus. Marcus raised the SIG, taking aim as best he could in the chaos, and fired round after round straight into the creature's face. The 9mm rounds tore through its skin, blood and gore splattering as the creature recoiled, but it kept coming. Marcus squeezed the trigger again, putting another shot right between its eyes. Finally, the monster fell, collapsing on top of him. With a grunt, Marcus shoved the heavy, lifeless body off of himself, his chest heaving with exertion. He rolled to his knees, trying to catch his breath when he heard a sudden crash. The door to the mansion swung open with force, and Julia stood there, panic written all over her face. "Marcus, move! Get inside, now!" she shouted. Marcus glanced around, his mind racing. That's when he saw the dog lying on its side, whimpering in pain. The creature had managed to sink its teeth into the dog's back during the struggle. Without a second thought, Marcus scrambled to his feet, grabbing the dog by its harness and dragging it toward the mansion. His muscles screamed in protest, but he refused to leave the dog behind. As soon as they were inside, Julia slammed the door shut with a deafening thud. The sounds of the creatures outside faded slightly, their angry howls muffled by the thick walls of the mansion. Marcus collapsed against the wall, still gripping the dog's harness, his heart pounding in his chest. "Is it okay?" Julia asked, her voice trembling as she knelt down beside them, her eyes wide with fear and concern. Marcus quickly checked the dog's wounds. Blood matted its fur, but it was still breathing. "It's hurt," he said, his voice rough. "But it can make it if we act fast." "We need to get Lucas and Amber," Julia said, already moving toward the hallway. "They can help." "Call them now," Marcus said, his mind racing as he kept his hand on the dog's harness. "Tell them to bring whatever they need to patch this guy up. We can't let him die." Marcus, bruised but okay, sat down after dragging the injured dog into the mansion. Julia slammed the door behind them as Mike stayed on watch through the drone, curious to see what the creatures are doing outside after all the commotion. Amber and Lucas rushed downstairs, quickly asking what had happened. "The dog's hurt," Marcus said, glancing at the creature bite on its side. "We need to help it." Without hesitation, Lucas bent down to check the dog's injury. "I'm not a vet," he muttered. "But I'll do my best." Amber nodded in agreement. "We have to act fast." They scooped up the dog, carefully carrying it toward the room filled with medical supplies. As they hurried upstairs, Lucas looked determined to save the dog, hoping his experience as a surgeon would be enough for this task. As they carried the injured dog up the stairs, Amber and Lucas noticed something unsettling. Around the bite wounds on the dog's back, a green, slimy substance oozed from where the creature had bitten it. The smell was awful, a putrid stench that made both of them grimace. Amber frowned, inspecting the wounds more closely. "What is that stuff?" she asked, disgusted. Lucas shook his head, worry creasing his brow. "It must be from the creature. This could be some sort of toxin or infection from its bite." They exchanged a quick glance, both realizing the urgency of the situation. The green substance was seeping deeper into the dog's wounds, and they didn't know how much time they had before it got worse. "Let's hurry," Lucas said, his voice tense. "We need to clean this up fast, or it could spread." Amber nodded as they rushed the dog into the medical room, preparing to do everything they could to save it. Amber and Lucas quickly got to work on the dog's wounds. They cleaned the bites with hydrogen peroxide and povidone iodine, the antiseptic used for sterilizing surgical wounds. As they carefully washed away the blood and the green, slimy substance left behind by the creature, they realized just how serious the situation was. Though none of the dog's vital organs had been harmed, the infection around the bite wounds was like nothing they'd ever seen. The strange, foul-smelling substance seemed to be seeping deeper into the tissue despite their efforts. Amber injected the dog with antibiotics and painkillers, doing everything she could think of to fight the infection. Lucas applied wound dressings and secured them, but they both knew this wasn't something that modern medicine could easily solve. "This isn't normal," Lucas said, his face grim. "We've given it everything we can, but whatever this is, it's something else." Amber nodded, her eyes filled with concern as she stroked the dog's fur. "We'll just have to wait and hope it pulls through." They stepped back, exchanging worried glances. Everyone was hoping the dog would make it, but deep down, they all felt the uncertainty hanging over them. As Amber and Lucas worked on the dog downstairs, Mike was up on the roof, rounding up his equipment. He landed the drone carefully, packed it into its case, and began gathering the rest of his gear. As he turned to run back down to check on what was happening with the dog, something caught his eye. Just as he sprinted past one of the roof's towers, a flicker in his peripheral vision made him pause. He glanced over, instinctively feeling that something was off. The gargoyle. The grotesque stone creature, which had been perched on the roof spire since they first arrived, was gone. Mike blinked, his heart rate spiking. He distinctly remembered the eerie sight of it earlier, its half-stone, half-flesh form. But now the spire stood empty, no sign of the creature. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He scanned the area, looking for any sign of movement but saw nothing. Swallowing hard, Mike shook his head and hurried inside, the strange disappearance weighing heavily on his mind. The atmosphere was heavy with tension as the group gathered around the table where the injured dog lay. Its wounds were raw, oozing a strange green slime that Amber and Lucas examined with concern. They had seen many injuries in their medical professions, but this was unlike anything they had encountered. The group all stood in the medical room looking at the dog, still not any better. "It's been 10 days, Amber said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if it's going to pull through. That slime, it's worrying." Lucas nodded, his brow furrowed. "We need to keep monitoring it closely. If the infection spreads..." Marcus stepped forward, his expression serious. "If it hadn't been for this dog, I wouldn't have made it back. It jumped in front of that creature to save me." Mike broke the silence, a hint of admiration in his tone. "Yeah, almost like Juan." Everyone looked at him, puzzled. "Who's Juan?" Julia asked. "Have you guys not read the Silmarillion?" Mike replied, his excitement palpable. Juan was a legendary hound in Tolkien's tales. He fought Karkaroth, the Great Wolf, and was known for his loyalty and bravery. "That's a really cool name," Lucas said, nodding in approval. Marcus smiled faintly, then shook his head. "I like the name Nox, it means night in Latin. This dog is such a mystery, showing up here all alone in a place like this. There's something sharp and cunning about him, almost like a guardian lurking in the shadows." Everyone agreed, their expressions softening as they looked down at the dog. "If he survives, Nox it is," Julia said, hope flickering in her eyes. As they gathered in the tactical room, aka Marcus Toy Store. Julia, Amber, Mike, and Lucas pressed Marcus for details about his encounter with the creatures outside. The tension in the air was palpable, each of them acutely aware of the dangers lurking beyond the mansion's walls. Marcus, Julia urged, her voice steady but laced with concern. What did you see out there and what did you find at the body? Marcus's mind raced back to the chilling moments outside, the memory of the grotesque creature fresh in his mind. But another image lingered. One he couldn't shake. The lifeless body of the police officer lay in the underbrush, a grim reminder of the stakes they faced. His fingers brushed against the badge he had picked up from the corpse. Officer James Reynolds. A shiver ran down his spine as he recalled the implications. He knew the three newcomers must be the escaped convicts, but what about the other two? Bruce had introduced himself as the chef, but Marcus couldn't figure out how he fit into this twisted scenario. And then there was Colin, the silent observer. The man rarely spoke, choosing instead to watch with an intensity that unnerved Marcus. What did he know? Hey, Lucas interjected, noticing the faraway look in Marcus's eyes. You okay? Marcus snapped back to the present, frustration mounting as he realized the loose ends swirling in his mind were driving him mad. He had hardly even asked the newcomers who they were, and now their presence felt like a ticking time bomb. Julia, knowing him too well, narrowed her eyes at him. You're uneasy about something, she said, her voice a mixture of sympathy and challenge. What is it? Marcus clenched his jaw, the weight of unasked questions pressing down on him. I need to figure out what's really going on here. Something doesn't add up. Amber crossed her arms, her expression serious. Then let's start asking questions. We can't afford to be kept in the dark, not now. Mike nodded in agreement, glancing at Lucas. We need to know what we're dealing with if we're going to survive this. Marcus studied his companions, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. He realized that revealing the truth about the convicts would undermine his plan and shatter the fragile trust they had built. For now, he decided to keep that secret under wraps. Instead, he diverted the conversation back to their immediate concerns. All we've seen in this place are empty buildings, he said, his voice steady. That can't be all there is. There must be something hidden out there. It can't be just nothing. I want to go out again. Amber, scanning the room filled with military gear, perked up at the idea. Why not give me that 338 Norma over there? She pointed at the sleek rifle leaning against the wall. I'll give you some cover with Mike off the roof. Everyone except Lucas exchanged questioning glances, their skepticism hanging in the air. You can handle that? Mike asked, his tone a mix of admiration and disbelief. Of course, Amber replied confidently. I'm from Texas, remember? Lucas chuckled. Yeah, she'll take your eye out with that thing. Amber shot him a playful glare before turning back to Marcus, her expression serious. We can be a great help if you would just trust us. Marcus felt a flicker of hope at her words. If we go out, we need to be smart about it, he said, glancing around at the group. But Lucas, you're too valuable with your expertise to risk outside for no reason. Lucas nodded, understanding the weight of Marcus's words. Yeah, good idea. But I think it's time you give me a gun too. Marcus considered this for a moment then sighed. All right, you can have a sidearm. But keep it hidden, not a word to our new friends. We don't know enough about them to trust them. Understood, Lucas replied, a determined look in his eyes. Mike, you and Amber will take the roof for a vantage point. We'll search the nearby buildings for anything useful. I'll stay back and watch your six, Julia interjected. If anything goes wrong, I'll be ready to help. All right, Marcus agreed, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Let's gear up and make a plan. We need to find out what else is out there and keep our eyes open for any threats. As they prepared, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were inching closer to a dangerous truth. But with his team ready to back him up, he felt they had a fighting chance. Okay, Marcus said, gathering the group's attention. So we have a good idea of who does what. Now we need to identify a new target building to do reconnaissance on. Agreed, Mike replied, looking around at the team. But we don't have a map of the area. How do we figure out where to go next? Good point, Marcus said. Let's pull up the recording from the drone. We can study it to see if we can identify any other buildings worth checking out. Mike nodded, heading toward the table where the drone's control panel rested. He powered it up, and the screen flickered to life, displaying the last recorded footage of their previous drone flight. The group crowded around, their eyes glued to the screen. As the footage played, they saw sweeping views of the eerie, dilapidated structures that loomed in the mist. Suddenly, Amber pointed at the screen. Wait! Pause it there! The footage froze, revealing a distant view of the landscape. In the far background, the spires of what seemed to be a cathedral jutted into the sky, their Gothic architecture silhouetted against the murky horizon. "What is that?" Lucas asked, leaning closer. "Looks like a cathedral." Marcus studied the image, feeling a mix of intrigue and caution. It could be worth checking out. Cathedrals often have hidden spaces, and there might be supplies or even clues about what's going on here. Plus, it's high ground, Mike added, nodding. "If we can get up there, we might have a better vantage point to scout the area." Amber's eyes lit up. "I say we head there next. We need to see what's inside that place." Marcus looked at the cathedral, assessing the distance. "It's a long way there, a lot of ground to cover. Mike, do you think the drone can make it that far?" Mike frowned, contemplating the question. "Maybe. Let's do a flight there first and see what we can pick up. If we can get a closer look at the cathedral and the surrounding area, it'll help us decide if we should proceed." "All right," Marcus agreed, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "We'll use the drone to scout it out first. Let's get everything ready." The group absorbed the implications of the cathedral's presence, each aware that this could either be a source of hope or another layer of danger. "Stay sharp and keep your eyes open. We're going to find out what secrets lie in that cathedral," Marcus said, rallying the team. With determination, they began to gather their equipment, ready to face whatever awaited them in the distance. As they all started to gather their gear and prepare for the drone flight, Marcus stood back for a moment, watching the group. Mike was already adjusting the drone controls with swift precision, Amber confidently checking over her weapon, and Lucas was scanning the recording, deep in thought about their next move. Julia was discussing the drone with Mike, while Amber had effortlessly fallen into a supportive role, her sharp eyes always on the lookout for threats. It struck Marcus just how easily everyone was slipping into their roles, like it was second nature. His mind raced back to his earlier suspicions. None of them were here by random chance. The more he observed them, the more it became obvious. They weren't just survivors thrown together. They were handpicked for this, as if each person had a purpose, a skill that fit perfectly into the bigger picture. He realized how well they meshed, and it left a strange, unsettling feeling in his gut. It wasn't a coincidence. Something or someone had selected them for this nightmare, and as much as he tried to resist that thought, he couldn't deny it any longer. As the group filed out of the room, each of them focused and falling seamlessly into their new roles, Marcus felt a deeper sense of connection to them, but also the weight of the unseen force that had brought them together. The group was busy near the entrance, gearing up to explore the massive, imposing cathedral in the far-off distance. The building loomed, its black stones and twisting vines casting an ominous shadow. Julia, Amber, and Lucas chatted quietly while Marcus stood off to the side, securing his gear. Zane had been watching him, brooding, for a while now. His gaze shifted repeatedly to the weapons Marcus carried, a mix of envy and simmering anger in his eyes. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, Zane strode up to Marcus, his posture aggressive. "Hey, Marcus, we need to talk." Marcus glanced up, his interest barely piqued. He continued tightening a strap on his pack, not fully engaging. "Not now. We're getting ready to head out." But Zane wasn't having it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening tone. "No, we need to talk now. You've been hoarding the weapons. I want one. Give it to me." Marcus finally turned to face Zane, his expression calm but alert. "And if I don't?" Zane leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. "Then I'll start causing problems, Marcus. I'll hurt someone. Maybe Amber or Julia. Think I'm kidding?" Marcus felt the tension spike in the air. Zane's threats hung heavily between them, and as he stared into Zane's hostile gaze, he knew the guy was serious. "You really want to test that?" In a flash, before Marcus could fully process, Zane threw a left punch at him. Marcus reacts by slipping to his right. Years of boxing sessions were not spent in vain. Zane's left-hand punch glides past his face, Marcus immediately countering with a powerful right to Zane's ribs followed by a swift left hook that connects solidly with Zane's chin. The force sends Zane stumbling backward, but to Marcus's surprise, Zane doesn't go down. Instead, he charges back in, showing more grit than Marcus expected. Marcus thinking to himself, "Tough bastard." Zane grinned, confident as ever, his fists raised in a loose, almost casual stance. Marcus could see it instantly, he was all brawn and no technique. He's a brawler, Marcus thought, noting Zane's sloppy posture. That wild aggression might work on someone less trained, but not today. Not against me. Marcus feinted with a quick jab, testing Zane's reaction. As expected, Zane lunged forward, swinging with brute force but poor timing. Marcus easily slipped the blow, stepping aside. He's too slow, Marcus calculated. Overcommitting. Too emotional. Zane's grin faded for a split second as Marcus moved with precision, taking advantage of the overextension. Before Zane could recover, Marcus was already on him, closing the distance, dropping low, and sweeping Zane's leg out from under him. With a thud, Zane hit the ground hard, the air knocked out of him. Marcus didn't hesitate. In a fluid motion, he moved to pin Zane, expertly controlling his limbs. Years of training kicked in. His ground fighting skills honed over countless encounters like this. Zane thrashed beneath him, trying to fight back, but Marcus kept his weight perfectly balanced, applying pressure in all the right places. He has no idea what he's doing down here. Zane growled in frustration, attempting to throw wild punches from the ground, but they were useless. Marcus had him locked down, neutralizing every attempt before it could even form. It's over, Marcus thought calmly. Zane might be strong, but Marcus had spent years learning how to control someone bigger, someone tougher. Strength won't save him. Zane's breathing grew ragged, anger and panic flashing in his eyes. Marcus saw the opening and shifted, setting up his next move. In one sharp, precise motion, Marcus brought his elbow down hard onto Zane's forehead. The impact was brutal. A sickening thud echoed, and a large lump immediately began to form, swelling as Zane's head slammed back against the floor. Zane groaned, stunned, his fight draining out of him. He's done, Marcus thought, watching the pain register on Zane's face. But he still doesn't know it. Frank and Tyler suddenly rushed in, grabbing Marcus by the shoulders, pulling him off. But Marcus is ready. With a quick spin, he throws Tyler into the nearest wall, sending him crashing down with a solid thud. Frank immediately backs off, hands raised in surrender. Okay, sorry, mate, I don't want to fight you. Marcus breathes deeply, his body still tense, but his mind is clear. He feels in total control, Zane wheezing at his feet, Tyler sprawled on the floor. But as he looks at Frank, something starts to click. The way Frank controlled Zane earlier, and how Zane just stepped in line afterward. This wasn't a fight, it was a test, Marcus suddenly realized. Frank's been pulling the strings this whole time, trying to see what I'm capable of. Now they know. Marcus clenches his fists but keeps his outward composure. He's won the fight, but the real battle may have just begun. Marcus stood, dusting himself off after Frank and Tyler had yanked him off Zane. His chest heaved slightly, his breath still sharp from the adrenaline. Zane lay on the floor, gasping for air, clutching his side where Marcus had knocked the wind out of him. The room felt tense, thick with unspoken threats. Marcus glanced down at Zane, who was still struggling to catch his breath, then turned his gaze toward Frank and Tyler, who had just pulled him off. You're lucky you have friends. His voice cut through the silence like a knife. Zane, still writhing on the ground, glared up at Marcus but didn't dare move. Marcus then turned his full attention to Frank, his eyes narrowing. And you? Marcus stepped toward Frank, his tone cold, lethal. If you ever touch me again, I won't hold back. Frank raised his hands in mock surrender, his face calm, but his eyes calculated. There was no fear there, just quiet observation. Marcus recognized that cunning gaze now, and the realization hit him like a blow. Marcus knew it now. Frank had planned this. They wanted to test me, to see how dangerous I am. But now I know who they really are too. No more games. His jaw clenched, but he kept his cool. The game was over, the cards were on the table. He had shown them more than he wanted to, but at least now, they knew the consequences. He turned to Julia, who stood off to the side, watching everything unfold. Her expression remained calm, unreadable, just as always. Marcus motioned for her to follow. Come on, Julia. Let's go. As he turned to leave, he shot one last look at Zane, who had barely managed to sit up, still catching his breath. Marcus's voice was calm, but filled with warning. If you raise your hands again, Zane, it'll be your last time. Zane didn't respond. Frank, who had watched everything unfold in silence, gave nothing away, his eyes still studying Marcus as they walked away. Marcus knew one thing now for sure, there would be no more pretending. As Marcus and Julia strode out of the massive entrance hall, their footsteps echoing in the grand space, Amber and Lucas exchanged brief glances and silently followed them, leaving the others behind without a word. The air still buzzed with the tension left from the fight. Back inside, Tyler bent down to help Zane to his feet. Zane winced in pain, clutching his side, clearly struggling to stay upright. His face twisted in discomfort, and his usual cocky demeanor had faded into irritation. Frank, laughing with a mocking edge, looked at Zane and shook his head. I thought you could fight. Zane grimaced but didn't respond to the laughter. Instead, he winced as he touched his ribs. I think my ribs are broken. Frank waved his hand dismissively, not showing an ounce of concern. His laughter faded, but his smugness remained. Well, now we know we can't ignore the guy. He gave a slow nod, as if finally acknowledging the obvious. He's got some skills, definitely not your average guy. Tyler, who had been nervously hovering by Zane, looked worried. His voice dropped a bit as he glanced toward Frank. So, what are we gonna do? Frank didn't stop walking, heading toward the door himself, leaving Zane and Tyler behind. He glanced over his shoulder, the same cunning look in his eyes. Talk nice to the pretty nurse. He smirked, nodding in Amber's direction, even though she was gone. Maybe she'll patch you up. And next time, Zane. He paused for a second before delivering the final blow. Don't lose. With that, Frank walked off without a second glance, leaving Zane standing there, still clutching his side, and Tyler awkwardly shifting in place, unsure what to do next. As Marcus and Julia arrived at the toy store, Amber and Lucas weren't far behind. Lucas looked at Marcus with concern. Are you okay? Marcus nodded, but inside, he was still fuming, not because of the fight itself. He'd won that without much trouble, but because he hadn't done more to control himself. He knew he could have avoided reacting so harshly. Part of him was mad for being provoked. But he had to admit, it had been fun putting Zane in his place. Marcus glanced at Julia, his jaw tightening. They played me? His tone was measured, but the frustration was clear. It was deliberate. They wanted to see what I could do. Julia nodded knowingly. Yup, and now they know. But what's our next move? Marcus didn't answer right away, though he already knew in the back of his mind, next time, he wouldn't just end the fight, he'd finish it. He felt that calm, dangerous edge settling in. Just then, Mike burst in, panting slightly from having run. What happened? I heard something go down. Amber gave him a mischievous grin. Marcus kicked that bastard's ass. Mike raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. Damn, no surprises there. Can't believe I went and missed that. I always miss out on everything. Marcus walked over to one of the large lockers lining the wall of the room. With a swift motion, he opened it and pulled out two small tactical daggers, their blades gleaming under the dim light. He approached Julia and Amber, handing one to each of them. Here, he said firmly. Take these and hide them somewhere you can access them if you need to. Amber's eyes widened with interest as she examined the dagger, twirling it expertly between her fingers. A smirk danced on her lips as she slid it into her belt. Nice. Thanks, Marcus. Julia took her dagger with a steady hand, offering him a silent nod of gratitude. The weight of the weapon felt reassuring, even as she tucked it away in her gear. Don't hesitate to use them if you must, he instructed, his voice low and serious. Keep them hidden until you need to. Amber nodded, the earlier playfulness replaced by a more serious demeanor. Julia met Marcus's gaze, understanding the weight of his words. They were all in this together now, and the stakes were rising. Marcus stepped back, feeling a surge of responsibility for the group. He could sense that this was just the beginning of the challenges they would face in the creepy cathedral and beyond. Just then, Frank sauntered into the room, his relaxed posture conveying an air of indifference. He didn't seem to respect any of them, Marcus included, after the confrontation that had just taken place. As he strolled past the gear scattered about, he took his time, examining the surroundings before casually plopping down at the table. Don't worry, I don't want trouble, he said, a smirk spreading across his face that sent a chill down Julia's spine. Let's look at this from another perspective. We need each other. There's more space here than we could ever need. You don't even have to see us. This place is so big. Julia felt a tightening in her chest as she scrutinized Frank. His demeanor was unsettling, more dangerous than before. He seemed to exude an eerie confidence, a cunning intelligence that made her pulse quicken. It was as if he were a predator, calculating and cold, making her question his true motives. Sure, Marcus replied. We might need each other, that's true, he replied, his tone steely. But from where I stand, you need us way more than we need you. Just then, Zane limped into the room, his expression a mix of pain and forced politeness. He approached Amber, his voice dripping with faux charm. Excuse me, Amber, but could you please help me with my ribs? Lucas, standing nearby, shot Zane an incredulous look before stepping forward. Come on, I'll take you to the room with the medical gear, he said, motioning for Zane to follow him. Let's get you patched up. As Zane began to move, Julia couldn't shake the feeling that Frank was far more dangerous than he let on. His smirk lingered in her mind, a constant reminder that she was in the presence of a man who could manipulate and exploit their vulnerabilities. The thought gnawed at her, intensifying her resolve to understand the complexities of the situation they were all in. Frank rose from his seat, that same unsettling smirk playing at his lips as he stretched his arms casually. "Well, thank you very much for the nice chat," he said, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "Let's all calm down, and let's be rational." With that, he turned and walked off, leaving an uncomfortable silence in his wake. Meanwhile, Knox lay in another room, still suffering from the strange infection inflicted by the creature's bite, adding another layer of urgency to their situation.